Hi, I'm Gordon again, and I'm back for chapter 4 of Frank L. Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Now, if you are a fan of the movie, you are probably already catching on that the book has a few differences. The first of which are the silver slippers, which in the movie were depicted as the ruby slippers. And the reason they were turned into ruby slippers in the movie was because it was Technicolor, and that was a huge thing back then. And silver slippers were a little bit drab, and the ruby slippers showed up a little bit more. Also, as you may have detected, it was not Glinda that greeted Dorothy in Munchkinland, but a different witch. So, be interesting to see if Glinda shows up in this book, and if so, when. But let's go on with chapter 4. And I'm so excited to read The Road Through the Forest. I'm so excited that I actually wore my favorite do-rag. I wear do-rags because I don't have hair. Chapter 4. After a few hours, the road began to get rough, and the walking grew so difficult that the Scarecrow often stumbled over the yellow bricks, which were very uneven. Sometimes, indeed, they were broken and missing altogether, leaving holes that Toto jumped across and Dorothy walked around. As for the Scarecrow, having no brains, he walked straight ahead and so stepped into the holes and fell full length onto the hard bricks. It never hurt him, however, and Dorothy would pick him up and set him on his feet again, while he joined her laughing merrily at his own mishap. The farms were not nearly so well cared for here as they were far back. There were fewer houses and fewer fruit trees, and the farther they went, the more dismal and lonely the country became. At noon they sat down on the roadside near a little brook, and Dorothy opened her basket and she took out some bread. She offered a piece for the Scarecrow, but he refused. "I am never hungry," he said, "and it is a lucky thing that I am not, for my mouth is only painted on. And if I should cut a hole in it so I could eat, the straw that I am stuffed with would come out, and that would spoil the shape of my head." Dorothy saw at once that this was true, so she only nodded and went on eating her bread. "Tell me something about yourself and the country you come from," said the Scarecrow when she had finished her dinner. So she told him about Kansas and how gray everything was there, and how the cyclone had carried her to the strange land of Oz. The Scarecrow listened carefully and said, "I cannot understand why you should wish to leave this beautiful country and return to some place as gray and dismal as Kansas." "That is because you do not have brains," answered the little girl. "No matter how dreary and gray our homes are, we people are flesh and blood. Would rather live there than any other country. Be it ever so beautiful, there is no place like home." The Scarecrow sighed. "Of course, I cannot understand it," he said. "If your heads were stuffed with straw like mine, you would probably all live in the beautiful places, and then Kansas would have no people at all. It is fortunate for Kansas that you have brains." "Won't you tell me a story while we are resting?" asked the child. The Scarecrow looked at her reproachfully and answered, "My life has been so short that I really don't know anything whatsoever. I was only made a day before yesterday. What happened in the world before that time is all unknown to me. Luckily, when the farmer made my head, one of the first things that he did was to paint my ears, so that I heard what was going on. There was another Munchkin with him, and the first thing I heard was the farmer saying, 'How do you like those ears?' 'They aren't straight,' answered the other. 'Never mind,' said the farmer. 'They are ears just the same,' which was true enough. 'Now I'll make the eyes,' said the farmer. So he painted my right eye, and as soon as it was finished, I found myself looking at him and everything around me with a great deal of curiosity, for this was the first glimpse of the world. "That's a rather pretty eye," remarked the Munchkin who was watching the farmer. "Blue paint is just the color for eyes." "I think I'll make the other one a little bigger," said the farmer. And when the second eye was done, I could see much better than before. Then he made my nose and my mouth. But I did not speak, because at the time I didn't know what a mouth was for. I had the fun of watching them make my body and my arms and my legs. And when they were fastened on my head, at last, I felt very proud of, for I thought I was a good man as anyone. "This fellow will scare the crows fast enough," said the farmer. "He looks just like a man." "Why, he is a man," said the other, and I quite agreed with him. The farmer carried me under his arm to the cornfield and set me up on the tall stick. "That's where you found me." He and his friend soon after walked away and left me all by myself. I did not like being deserted this way, so I tried to walk after him, but my feet would not touch the ground, and I was forced to stay up on that pole. It was a lonely life to lead, for I had nothing to think of, having only been made such a short while before. Many crows and other birds flew into the cornfield, but as soon as they saw me, they flew away, thinking that I was a Munchkin. And this pleased me and made me feel as if I was quite the important person. By and by, an old crow flew near me, and after looking at me carefully, he perched himself upon my shoulder and said, "I wonder if that farmer thought to fool me in this clumsy manner. Any crow of sense could see that you are only stuffed with straw." Then he hopped down at my feet and ate all the corn that he wanted. The other birds, seeing he was not harmed by me, came to eat the corn too. So in a short time, there was a great flock of them about me. I felt sad at this, for it showed I was not such a good scarecrow after all. But the old crow comforted me, saying, "If you only had brains in your head, you would be as good as any one of them, and better than many of them. Brains are the only thing worth having in this whole world, no matter whether one is a crow or a man." After the crows had all gone, I thought this over and decided I would try hard to get some brains. By good luck, you came along and pulled me off that stake. And from what you say, I am sure the great wizard will give me brains as soon as we get to the Emerald City. "I hope so," said Dorothy earnestly, "since you seem anxious to have them." "Oh, yes, I am anxious," returned the Scarecrow. "It is such an uncomfortable feeling to know one is a fool." "Well," said the girl, "let us go." And she handed the basket to the Scarecrow. There were no fences at all by the roadside now, and the land was rough and untilled. Towards evening, they came across to the great forest, where the trees grew so big and close together that their branches met over the road of the yellow brick. It was almost dark under those trees, for the branches shut out the daylight, but the travelers did not stop and went on into the forest. "If the road goes in, it must come out," said the Scarecrow. "And as the Emerald City is at the other end of the road, we must go wherever it leads us." "Anyone would know that," said Dorothy. "Certainly that is. Why, I know it," said the Scarecrow. "It has required brains to figure it out, then I should never have said it." After an hour or so, the light faded away, and they found themselves stumbling along in the darkness. Dorothy could not see at all, but Toto could, for some dogs see very well in the dark. and the Scarecrow declared he could see as well as by the day. So she took hold of his arm and managed to get along fairly well. "If you see any house or any place where we can pass the night," she said, "you must tell me, for it is very uncomfortable walking in the dark." Soon the Scarecrow stopped. "I see a little cottage right ahead of us," he said, "built out of logs and branches. Shall we go there?" "Yes, indeed," answered the child. "I am all tired out." So the Scarecrow led her through the trees until they reached the cottage. And Dorothy entered and found a bed of dried leaves in one corner. She lay down at once, and with Toto beside her, she soon fell into a sound sleep. The Scarecrow, who was never tired, stood up in another corner and waited patiently until morning came. And that concludes Chapter 4. Chapter 5 is going to be, the rescue of the Tin Woodman. Y'all have a great evening. I hope everyone is well. Take care.